Started with Armed Forces Korea Network Television. This was actually one of our remotes on location. Those are the engineers. Notice how cheerful they look. I don't know what it is about an on-location shoot, but engineers are always so cheerful about that. Below this is my time when I got out of the Army, when I was working in Revere, and we had these road cases. And you can see all the gobbledygook back there, the wires and stuff like that. Wherever we'd go on location, we'd have to set that up. And the truck below was actually a cable technician's truck. And we got Continental to loan it to us. And I would set up tables in the truck and then put all those racks and all those wires together, just to basically get some sort of semblance of a production truck. And we joked, one of the productions we'd done in Revere, little kid walked up, turned our generator off. Okay, you can go to the next page. Another image, we put the camera up on top of the roof, but we didn't have any kind of protection up there, so it would be a static shot, old style camera. And Deb, please don't be mad, but I only had one picture on that last page. Can you go back? Okay, one more, there, no. I worked with Deb on HPA-TV for quite a few years, and I actually worked with Steve Ruiz and Frank Maroney on 2 variations of Deb's truck, and we used that truck on location as well. And now you can go one page forward. Yeah. This was EBC-TV's first variation of a truck, the Dodge Ram, and as you can see, we started out with a hollow shell. And again, the very first time we started using it, we were just using it to lug gear around until we could figure out how to build it. Okay, thank you. In this first variation of the van, we went to a company called Northeast Custom Creations, NKK, and I'm glad they didn't put another K on there, it would have sounded weird. But they built sort of the shell, as you can see here, and we installed the equipment and we did the wiring ourselves. And we had spools and they gave us a nice little backup camera, and we did the wiring for that whole bit there. You can move next page. We did a nice coordination with one of the local businesses, 2 of them actually, Pole Wolf Motors, which we bought the van from at a really cheap price. I used to joke that rust and paint were the only 2 things holding the van together, and we definitely didn't drive it outside town because we were afraid the tires would fall off and the motor would drop out. But for what it did, it was decent at least. You can see it's very crowded in there. And again, that big heavy guy, believe it or not, that's me. I lost a lot of weight. But when I was heavy, we could fit maybe one other person in there and they'd be cringed in there with me. Very tight space. We were using an old MX switcher and old analog gear. And my board members, there and a couple other pictures, weren't too happy with the fact that the picture quality wasn't always great. We always had a lot of problems with the van as far as electronics were concerned. We're always trying to get it fixed and getting it to work right. Okay, you can go to next. Then this happened. I'm driving the van one day and some woman decided to run a red light and totaled our van and her car. And we did repurpose some of the equipment from the van. We now have a safety ladder on our refrigerator in case we need to get to the top shelf. Last Christmas, we didn't have a van at all. We were working on getting a new van, so we actually had to cover the Christmas parade in pouring rain in December. And I'm not sure if we're smiling there or just gritting our teeth because people in the parade were actually looking at us and feeling bad for us. These are the people marching in the rain. They're like, oh, they look so miserable over there. But my board president vowed, if we're going to do a van again, we're going to do it right this time. Okay. In this case, we have a Mercedes Sprinter. And I know it's a very expensive vehicle just to start with. We got lucky in the fact that one of our board members, friends of a friend, was able to get us an extraordinarily good deal on a used van. And as you can see, totally hollow shell in there. Enough room that folks can stand up on the inside. And in excellent condition. And it's just weird sort of serendipity that we ended up with the van. You can go to the next page. In comes Peter. Peter did an amazing job with us. We had a built-in generator this time, so no more punk kids walking up and turning the switch off. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Nice shelves, nice countertop, plenty of room on the inside. Okay, go to the next page. We upgraded our equipment to JDC 650 cameras with camera operators. but we're also using these Sony EVI cameras and a Sony remote controller unit. And what I have discovered in the past month is that it's a lot better to cover a football game with remote control cameras and everybody stays nice and warm in the van than to put them on top of the press box in the freezing cold. And my volunteers are very happy about that, and so am I. The EVIs I recommend. We're also using the ACM Pro, and we're using a broadcast Flint switcher. And the reason we chose that particular switcher is because we have the broadcast mica in our control room. So we can actually do our graphics in our studio, put them onto a flash drive, and then just transfer them into the Flint. So no more sitting in the van in the freezing cold or having to go out there ahead of time to type stuff in. It's just a quick transfer. A couple of different shots of our goofy volunteers on location. I got an idea from Deb today, which I'm stealing. Our van is slightly higher up, and she came up with this cool box that you put down for a set of steps, which I'm stealing that idea from you. And one of our sweet little ladies right here helped us on Friday's game, and she went to step down because the stair is slightly black, missed, and went head over tea kettle. She's okay, but I think that stair idea was really cool. Okay, so do's and don'ts. Do get estimates from several vendors. Do look at what other people are using their van for. If you can, visit facilities, drop by. You can always come by and see ours and see what we're doing with it. Look at the sites where you're going to be using the van, because we had to look at where we could fit the van for a Christmas parade, for football games and stuff like that. Musical events, we bring it onto the common. Very narrow entrance. I was very terrified about being able to get our Mercedes in that entrance onto the common, but it turns out we just fit, and you need very precise turning directions. Determine what your financial budget is going to be, but what I like to say, stick to it, but also allow for possible cost overruns. They might discover something, like Peter might discover something that might be wrong with your van that needs to be fixed or added on to make it better. Do make sure all of your equipment, you have manuals. I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, you can go to the next page. Try not to buy the wrong size van. Like I said, the first van that we had, it was wicked cheap, but it was also wicked cramped. The engine had problems. We couldn't fit as many people in there. It was miserable, and the roof towards the end started leaking, which is always a scary thing. Don't forget to insure the van, not just for the contents, but also all of the labor it took to build it, because that's one of the things you don't think of. When you're building the van, you put insurance on it, and yeah, if you have an accident and something happens to the van, fine, you're going to be able to replace the stuff. But if you also insure for the labor, and it's not that much more, because we talked to our insurance agent, he said, yeah, you can insure for the labor, it's not that much more. It's worth it in the end, because then you can build a better van if you have to. This is just personal taste here. Exterior generators I don't like anymore, just because of that one little punk kid who turned the switch off. Don't buy it simply because it's cheap. Again, it comes down to whether it's the van or the equipment you're putting into the van. Quality is going to last you longer. Our van is expected to last several millennia now. At least that's what we're hoping for. But we put in the good stuff. And rain covers for the camera. I don't know how many times with our first van we would go out and I'd have to put garbage bags on top of the camera because we didn't bother to buy porta-brace covers. Now we have porta-brace covers. Okay. Another thing as far as whether you need a production van or not, if you're still using an iLoop system, you're obviously going to need a modulator, or whether you're using IP to transmit, that kind of thing. What type of cameras you want to use, or what type of cameras you want to upgrade to, the recording system. This is one personal thing I found out, and I want to point out, the ACM Pro is a wonderful recording system, but if it loses power in the middle of recording, it corrupts the file and is almost unsalvageable. You can pay to have it salvaged, but unless you're willing to pay the extra money to have it salvaged, so keep that in mind. Also, if you're using manual cameras, make sure, of course, that you have enough volunteers. With using the remote cameras, oh, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I don't know how many times I go onto the listservs or onto the Facebook pages and I'll throw questions up. The wonderful thing about Access is everybody's willing to help each other, and there's no such thing as a stupid question except maybe the one that isn't asked. So I know somebody had asked at the minute, front of us, I'm almost done, how much the whole Michigas cost us. Keeping in mind that we are in a high school, so we don't pay rent. We run the educational channel on behalf of the school system. That's why we don't pay rent. And we get our benefits through the town because we run the government channel for them. We've been stocking money away. So cost for the van, $34,000. Van interior, $42,917. Van equipment, $55,000. Van equipment installation, $19,000. For a grand total of $152,320.15.
So did you say equipment as well?
Yeah.
You're including without
Yeah.
equipment, what was it?
Um,
What did we say it was about
something like 76, 77,000.
76 without
Yeah.
the equipment.
Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that you have to go out and find a Mercedes Sprinter and buy all these nice expensive toys. You build according to what you need. Like I said, when we first started with that little Dodge Ram van, it was all ramshackle pieces of equipment that I pieced together from what was left at ACM. It's all according to what your needs and what you can afford, obviously, you know, so.
Hi, folks. Thanks for coming to the event here today. And how many folks currently have a truck, just to kind of see where folks are in the process? And how many of you are actually looking to make this a transition in the next year or two? Great, cool. So most of you are familiar with Access AV. We're up in Concord, New Hampshire. I live in Massachusetts. I'm our Massachusetts guy. We have built a facility that actually has a nice large loading area and truck building facility built right into it. And we do metal fabrication and cabinets right inside of our space. You're welcome to come up and take a look at our build at any time you'd like. But as both of these guys have mentioned, the biggest, most important part of your process is going to be all that pre-production time before you even buy the vehicle. So let's start taking a look at what we've got. We have built about 8 or 9 trucks that have been retrofits of existing vehicles that other folks have had. And when we had our first customer ask us, we're looking for the best new truck, we did an awful lot of research on the inside of the truck, the cost of the truck, features that we thought would be beneficial to building out facilities for the kind of work that we do. And Deb, if you go ahead and hit the first button there. So you're going to see 4 trucks that we built, all using the Dodge ProMaster 2500. There's a 1500, 2500, and a 3500. And the Sprinter, as you've heard mentioned, is essentially the same vehicle. They're made by a number of different companies, but Dodge seemed to be the best fit for money, for cost acquisition. You see it's about $33,500 roughly to get into that vehicle. And then you can decide what features that you might want to add from the factory. There's some that make an awful lot of sense. Rear step-ups or side panels, because it's kind of a haul to get up on the side of that truck, and having a little rail underneath there to walk up, it makes an awful lot of sense. We do all the custom fit out that you see from, see how this guy works. Here we go. So we do, as you saw Peter's trucks, we do the same thing. We put insulation behind these, and part of the reason that we like the Dodge ProMaster is that on the inside of the truck there's ribbing to which you can affix things. A lot of trucks, you might think, I have a great truck. And then suddenly your builder goes, yes, but to affix anything to the side of your truck, we got to go through the exterior of the van, and you're looking at future rust and other issues that are going to be a problem. So this truck has a lot of the pre-designed stuff that really come beneficial for the truck. So we do the insulation, we do the carpets, we do the interior and exterior lighting, we do the countertop. You'll notice that there's a half rack over here onto which is a mobile production case. A lot of us don't have secure facilities for putting our equipment. So wouldn't it be nice if that truck could be used modularly? All the equipment comes out of the truck. Maybe the only thing that stays on board the truck are your monitors, and they can generally be easier to replace than a $20,000 switcher. You can replace a $500 monitor if someone got into the vehicle. So the countertops, the flooring material, and the exterior pass-throughs or patch bays, depending on which way you might want to go. We do the ladder work, we do the platforms up on top, and any pass-throughs that might be necessary for that. One of the things that this vehicle is also, when it's not in use as a production truck, is a billboard for your business. So this truck, whether you're using it for a mobile production truck or just transporting or going to the Rotary meeting, it's serving a pretty valuable purpose. And it gives you an opportunity for working with your community to have the wrap done, perhaps by somebody else in exchange for promotional advertising on the side of the truck or on your bulletin board, something to think about. We've also discovered that up here, and you'll notice one here, that when the side of the truck is open, you're often a magnet for folks in your community. Ooh, let's see what the production truck looks like. And we've kind of created an environment where that's a welcoming opportunity. And we too like the idea of a captain's chair that can turn around at the passenger seat. It kind of is a nice place to plant your board of director president. Name the seat after him, as a matter of fact, but it becomes an opportunity for them or your executive director to mingle with the crowd and talk about what's going on and get people involved. So we like to have a nice large monitor there for that purpose. What we generally believe for any truck is you want to stand in this thing. The old Econoline vans are just too tough, and you can maybe get 3 people in those. The reason we like these Dodge trucks so much is you can get 7 people in that very easy, comfortably, 9 if you really need them. That's a pretty amazing thing. Deb, if you give us a click there. But to show you that we also do other retrofits, these are some of the other vans that we've built over the last year and a half. And these are retrofits. You'll notice that we've kind of moved away from the rear-facing rack kind of cabinet space and moved into a side counter space on those previous trucks that we looked at. But in this case, it made the most sense to maintain the rear-facing stuff because of all the vast equipment that they already had on board and were planning on keeping. These weren't full builds from the ground up. Excuse me. And I'm going to take a quick look at Acton over here for just a minute. And Deb, if you go ahead and hit the go button, and one more time. So when we got the Acton's van, they too had the rear-facing racks, and you know, they're heavy, and the CRTs that are in there generate a lot of noise and a lot of heat and that sort of stuff. They were all SD at the time. You notice the Ecolab switcher. And underneath the countertop over here were more and additional rack spaces. And they said, we need something efficient. They worked with us. We came up with a design, and see what we did. Go ahead, Deb. So we turned them 90 degrees, as we have with those previous vans that you saw, gave them room for 3 people versus 2 people up here. And there's actually room for 2 additional people at the wings that you can't quite see in this picture. But it gives them a good functional audio space, a TD, and a replay station over here as well. If you look down the truck, what we've actually done is we've put a cage up here for transport of gear, so if there's a shift for some reason, no gear comes into the rest of the truck, but it also gives you places to bungee cord the equipment in nice and tight. We have a rack that is permanently built, and we built a mesh around the rack to serve as part of the whole process there. So you have rear access to get to all the cables and the connectors. Next slide, please. So these are a couple of other vans that we've built in the past. This is actually not this van. It's actually in a horse trailer that someone mentioned a little bit earlier. You pull it on site and let it go. And there's some folks who actually do that. Chelmsford has 2 trucks that they pull up on site, a big truck like the box truck that you saw a moment ago, but they also pull a large horse trailer with them, and that's where they have 4 ISO stations for instant replay and a master director station inside that truck, and they feed the replays back to the main production vehicle in the second box truck. They're pretty impressive. It's worth taking a ride up to Chelmsford sometime to see what they do, mainly because they've done all this stuff largely in-house. We provided the equipment for them, but they provided their own engineering services. They're qualified to do that. But the high school kids wrote the code, the program for their instant replay on Macs about 7 years ago, and they're now into their 4th generation of kids who have built upon the code for their own manufactured. It's just fascinating stuff. And lastly, you might not use your truck for anything more than transport. Never storing anything, not even a countertop in there. Fold out a table, plop it down there, run an extension cord someplace, and maybe use something that you also use for town meeting from your auditorium, something that you don't need to actually have stored in the truck, but you could locate someplace at the event where you're going. And that's also something to think about. These cases are fantastic. They're also a little on the expensive side, but that's part of the cost by going with a smaller vehicle that you balance out. Next one, Deb. These are some other vehicles that follow the same kind of thing. You could very easily carry that thing, a monitor, and a keyboard and a mouse in your Mini, and lots of folks do. In fact, New Tech TriCaster gave away a studio and a Mini to a high school a couple of years ago. Some of you might have seen those ads in Video Maker. This is the new van that they just bought in Littleton, and they're going to outfit that with nothing more than a half a rack and a countertop. And everything else will be modularly added as needed. And so you can put stuff into a road case that has everything that you might possibly need, and with 1 or 2 monitors, you don't necessarily physically need the switcher because you can use a mouse or keyboard for that same purpose. Thanks, Ted. Next slide. So here's a couple of reasons why you might look to us, or what you should be looking for in whoever you're going to use as you go. You want to make sure that you're a big part of the design and the process. That's been mentioned by all of us up here today. You want to look to make sure that the equipment that's being used or going into your truck is being sold by an authorized dealer and offer support afterwards. Excuse me, my voice is going. I've had that flu for a couple of days. You want to make sure that somebody knows what they're doing in training you how to use this stuff. You're going to be spending maybe $70,000, $100,000 worth a year. You want to make sure that you know how this goes, but not only the training on the equipment, how the entire systems integrate together, that you have a good wiring diagram and you have a good understanding of the signal flow in your truck. Make sure that somebody is able to provide for you the custom services, the stuff that we mentioned a little bit earlier, from cable reels, patch bays, marine grade, military grade, roof platforms. Make sure you don't want to be climbing a ladder and then suddenly something's going to start unbolting. So you want to make sure somebody's doing the right thing there. Next slide, Deb. And then just to finish this thought, we have an installation bay right in our interior garage, so your truck is never outdoors, not a security risk. We're always building your truck inside the building. You can come up and take a look and be a part of that build out as it's taking place. Look for references. You've seen some of the trucks that we've built already. And we can assist you in purchasing your truck. About $34,000, $35,000 for the truck, but you might be able to get a better deal from a local vendor, car dealership in exchange for whatever services you guys work out together. And then make sure you've got warranty, tech support, and demos of the equipment, consultation pre and after the fact all built in. And I think there's maybe 2 more slides. I have all this information for you on handout that you should have gotten. If not, we have plenty more available. This is the truck that we found that works good for us for the reasons that you see on the handout that you have. And just the last couple of looks. Next slide, if you would. Just squished up on this resolution of this computer. These are actually 16:9 images. And this is a good example here, just a marine grade patch bay. What we do is you open this door, you have access to all the gear in the back of your rack. A pass-through, if you will, military grade pass-through, provides all of the cables in and out for your devices. And then you just keep your reels here and they just pass right through. Saves you a little bit. For some folks, they want the actual patch bay. Some folks find that this is just as easy to work with. Once the system is all built, it takes about 5 minutes for you to patch in your cables and you're good to go. You close the door and you don't necessarily have to have that access again. And then the last slide, Deb. Thanks. So you'll also notice that awnings are something that a couple of our folks have found very beneficial. It gives you a kind of a weatherproof staging area. You see that step up that I was talking about. These vans don't come with a handle. We like to install one about here because it's a good assist to come out, and just small little features like that that we're a part of. Thank you very much.
So I just want to mention that, like Russ, we had a really old Ford Econoline, really old. We had somebody put carpeting in it. We had a counter. We'd bring equipment in and out. We'd wire it. We could only fit a couple of people in there. So we made the decision to go with the Dodge ProMaster, and that's what we bought. We bought it December of 2014. Next slide. The first thing we did, now I should mention that I've never built a van before, but we had decided we were basically going to be the general contractors because it was going to allow us to save some money. So I hope you can learn from my lessons. I did, so, you know, it might be a little rinky-dink, but, you know, we decided that we would do this kind of layout. We knew we wanted an awning, we wanted the long counter, but we weren't really sure whether or not we were going to be wanting to do an L-shaped counter. We also knew that we weren't gonna be able to get everywhere in our town, and so we had to go with Robert's model of the stacked equipment cubes so that we could take our equipment out, plus we don't have a garage. So we did stacked equipment cubes, we have the long counter. This was actually my husband's idea. There's a hinge up of that counter which then flips down if you want to use it as an L, which is nice when you're taking tables and whatnot to locations. If you need them, you can just flip it up, store it in, you can flip down, and people just like to use it in different ways. We have 2 monitors, and we kind of laid out basically where we wanted everything to go. Next slide. And then what we did is we just kind of figured out just about how high we wanted the counter to be, where we wanted the monitors to be laid out for us, how we wanted everything laid out, and where things were going to go. Next slide. This was just some more detail of how we got to some of this, and I realize this might look a little rinky-dink to you, but I wanted to make sure that the information that we were giving our outfitter, which was in Billerica, Massachusetts, was correct. So we set up 2 tables in our studio, and we made templates out of paper of the monitors that we bought and shipped to the outfitter, and then I had every single one of my staff sit in a chair to where I knew that they were going to be comfortable with the height of the monitor. We can move ours left and right, but we couldn't move them up and down, so I wanted to make sure that that was going to be right. Next slide. This was the layout of our patch panel, which we then sent to Peter, and then you saw a picture, which you'll see again, of the actual patch panel that he did a beautiful job on. We know that we did way more than we would ever possibly need for a very long time, but we'd rather plan for the future and have what we needed. Next slide. And this was the wiring chart that we sent to Peter, and so this is what he got from us in terms of how we wanted the wiring to occur. Next slide. And next slide, same thing. This is me at the outfitter, and we're just, again, you know, now that we're in the van, we brought the tables in the van, we actually laid it out, we had cardboard cutouts this time, and we kind of sat and made sure that everything was laid out the way we wanted it to be laid out before they really got to installing everything. Next slide. This is the installer working on the wiring, and one of the things I just want to point out is that it's really important. I happen to be married to a licensed electrician, and one of the things we learned was at the time this company was not using a licensed electrician, and so when we got the van back, my husband, well, the first thing that happened when we were tripping some circuits, Peter actually came and took a look, and my husband took a look as well. There were GFIs inside that were tripping. My husband actually ended up redoing all the plugs, and in conversations with the outfitter, they will only be using licensed electricians from now on. They was using the right cabling, and we knew that because Peter had gone up to the outfitter and he had seen, because in this case, Peter just did a little bit. He didn't do any of the outfitting of the van. He did our patch panel and a couple just little things, but I hadn't really met him yet, so. But it's really important that whoever you go with, you make sure that you have a licensed electrician, journeyman, or master electrician, whichever, that's actually doing your wiring. I sent my husband up several times, so he saw exactly what kind of cabling of wire was going inside the van, and Peter saw what was going inside the van. So we knew what was going inside was right, but some of the connections were not really up to stuff. So next slide. These are just some more pictures of how that's all happening. Next slide. Next slide. And again, I think one of the things Peter said is get lots of pictures. So every few days I was asking them, because they were about 2.5 hours from me. And so I went up at least 4 times. My husband went a couple times. You were up a couple times. And then I was asking for pictures pretty much on a daily basis so I could watch what was happening. Next slide. So there's just some more pictures of the wiring. Next slide. And up there you have our AC unit, and now you see some of the paneling going in. I just want to point out that we actually ended up with a couple of plugs. and the shore power, and I think there's a better picture, and I'll explain why we did that next. We did not go with the roof where you can stand up and the railings and all that. We just decided we have a lot of older members, and we really weren't comfortable having people up on the roof. Next slide. And need more wiring, sorry. Keep going. This is the patch panel, so you can see that this is the part that Peter started and did for us. But you also see now the outfitter we use, some of the carpeting starting to go in, the electrical panel that's in. Next slide. And then now the counter's in, some of the lights are in. We put in a cable chase. Not crazy about the chase that went under the counter. We may have that something else. But one of the things I knew was that I wanted to do certain things, but then as we started using the van, I knew that there may be some things that we might consider changing up. So we wanted the flexibility. We did not block in like Russ's van is, and everybody's gonna have a different use, but again, we can't get our van in everywhere we need to go. We need to be able to take out our road cases. Next slide. And this was just an IKEA counter, by the way, that was fairly inexpensive, and I think it looks really good. One of the things that was of concern to me was I wanted enough depth of a counter. So I think as you look at some of these vans, you might notice some have thinner counters and some have deeper counters. I want to make sure that your counter is deep enough to accommodate the equipment that you're going to be putting on it. It has to fit. Know what your audio mixer is. Know what your switcher is. Your graphics computer. It has to fit. Okay. Next slide. And that's just another picture. You can see some of the carpeting in. This right here is a heater, and it does a really nice job heating up that van. And our air conditioner works pretty well too. We don't have a lot of storage, which I actually may steal one of Robert's ideas because he had a good idea on one of his that I liked and I saw. Next slide. You see, and then there's the vent. One of the things I learned, I didn't know this, I remember calling you about this, is when you put in these units, the air blows one way, not both ways. I didn't know that originally, so it blows not on you, it blows it towards the back. And then here, when you first come in the van, on the side, this is the heating. These are light switches to the outside of the van, which we also have back here, so you can just kind of reach in on the back. And then that's the inside. And then that's just the inside of the patch panel that's not done yet. Okay, next slide. More pictures. Yeah, there. So that's our AC. Heat. And believe me, this little unit right there puts out a ton of heat. It's like crazy. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so here you see, this is our little flip up. I thought that, and by the way, now, this is what you saw in Peter's picture, but we now have a back cover on that. I decided after to put a back cover on. The reason was I was concerned, even though look how nice it is, I was concerned maybe like a kid would come or somebody and like pull something out. But this was an ability to drop down and have an L shape if I wanted it. And I thought like maybe somebody would sit back here and face forward and run audio. My staff's mostly just using it the long way. I'd probably use it this way, but everybody's different, and then we have our road cases here. You can see here. I also want to urge you, I learned the hard way. One of my staff put a table in and scratched the floor like within a month. So I bought these mats fairly inexpensively, and now I have some. There was one here, but I have several now. And I noticed that Robert had the Drake van somewhere, and he has like more carpeting, like pieces of carpeting that you can probably just take out and clean and put right back on the floor. And I thought that was a really, really good idea. I liked that a lot. But you can also see here how everything fits, and that was really important. Next slide, please. And there's me at the outfitter, and again, just like kind of keeping an eye on things, making sure everything's going well. We have work lights, we have overhead lights, and then we also have task lights on ours that are individually switchable. So you can switch 1, 2, 3, whatever you need. And then this, I think, is very important. Somebody told me, who was it, that this is called the chair of the board seat. Did you tell me that? Who told me that? Did you say that? I think you did say that, yeah, which I think is great. And I thought it was pretty neat that I didn't realize that you have the driver's seat also flips around. I hadn't considered that, but I'm really glad I did that. And then, I don't think you can see it, but over here, I actually, underneath, we have a fire extinguisher mounted. We have 2 fire extinguishers in our van. I don't think anybody mentioned that, but we have 2 and they're mounted. Hopefully we won't need them. Next slide. I will disagree with Ross, although I agree with you that people can come and pull the plug.
Well, all I said was keep guards around it, you can have an exterior.
Right. This is a great one because even I can use it, and my husband highly recommends the Honda generators. And I'll bet you Robert and Peter and Russ do too, but I'm just guessing that he might.
Hondas are a great generator, but you'll find a couple of stalwarts who will say that transporting a generator in a van is illegal.
Oh, that's interesting. So this is not a permanent affix for us. We don't often need a generator. We tend to go places where there's power. But yeah, if you are going to need it, just be aware of where you're plugging it in, that that you have what you need. So next slide. And this is a push button, so that was easy. I didn't have to pull anything. This is now the outside of our patch panel, and you'll notice we have a lock. I don't know if Russ has a lock or if Robert or Peter do locks, but we actually asked for a lock. And then this was a recommendation by my husband, which was to have separate plugs on separate circuits for the AC and the equipment, so that if there was ever a surge from the AC, it would not impact the equipment. So that was his recommendation, and that was a really good one. And then we have an external plug if we need it. Next slide. We also, I don't think anybody mentioned this, but we actually got a directed Clifford alarm system. And it was really funny because my staff person was driving up the van yesterday, and I was actually getting like alerts that he was speeding, and I could also track where he was. So we don't have, like I said, we don't have a garage, but I can find this anywhere, wherever it is in the world, which is kind of nice. So we can lock it, we can unlock it. There's a panic, we don't have the trunk. We can see where it is. And then the other thing we did is I put in external cameras outside our building, which also work off our smartphones. And so if the alarm, what's happened a bunch of times is they come and mow the lawn early Monday morning and they keep setting off the alarm, but then I can just look on my phone and see that it's just them mowing, and it's only on Mondays this keeps happening. So we had a little bit of trouble with this system, as you recall. We had a low voltage warning, and we're not sure exactly, but I think that hasn't happened again.
Right.
We don't know why that was happening, do we? Do we know?
Because we fixed it.
Because you fixed it, because Peter fixed it. Yeah, so that's actually, we didn't do the remote car starter, but it's nice to know where it is if you can't lock it up and secure it. Robert, do you put these in too? Or is that an aftermarket thing? Okay.
That's customer.
Okay, so we've appreciated that. I also want to just mention there's been a few little weird things about the Dodge ProMasters that we've learned, and but they're under warranty when you buy them, and so just be aware. And like doors not always shutting properly, and they have to realign them. It's a Dodge thing, and they'll probably end up doing some recalls eventually. But we like it. We liked it because it was a little wider. Next one. And then you already saw our patch, but here it is again. And then here you see when we put the back cover on, because we just decided, even though everything's really nice and neat and secure, we've all different kids in there, you have seniors in there, you just want to make sure that nobody by accident goes oops and then pulls something out and you have to call and have it repaired. Next slide. So one of my staff is just really creative, and we actually have a company that does signs in our community. And so we bought this template, and then my staff person did his first ever van wrap vector. We had our logo, we already knew our logo, but now he had all of the dimensions, and he was able to give this to our sign maker. And the only thing I requested of him, because we had a little issue on another thing, was I wanted to make sure that the blue matched the blue of my awning. I know that was like a girl thing. Somebody said, oh, a girl designed this van, you can tell. So he actually, if somebody's kind of creative, you can kind of do this yourself, or I'm sure your sign maker can do it as well. Next slide. So here's our van. You can see, like, so they'll ask you questions like, if you put, you know, if you have an awning, do you want this to be white? Do you want it to be black? Or do you want it to be chrome? So all these little things. You also see we put a step up here, and we put a step here. And we do carry an apple box, and the apple box tends to go right here. We carry it, we put it there, and we step up. I like Robert's idea too about the handlebar. I think we might have to do that at some point. AC, we learned quickly that all these trees were dropping sap on top of our van, which we have washed once a month, and so I had to have all these trees kind of pushed back. And over here, this is our building. I have a camera out here that actually can see from the back all the way up to the driveway. Wide angle. Next slide. This was our grant. We had our annual meeting at Seacrest Hotel and Restaurant, and we decided to do the unveiling there. So we actually kept the van for about a week in the sign maker's garage so that we could drive it up and unveil it at our annual meeting. And so we had, because really this is a big marketing thing, right? Like, we drive around town in this. So we had our state senator, one of our state reps right here, and then we had a rep from our other state rep. There's my board president and a bunch of my board members and me, and we just made a big splashy thing. There's how we keep our cable reels nice and color-coded and everything. Next slide. And then here we are all done. This is what that was, and if you saw it outside, you saw. So we have 2 monitors. We can actually move these monitors. I forgot what it was that I ended up buying, but we can actually like take these monitors and move them left and right if we need to. We don't really do it a whole lot, but we can if we want. Next slide. And then that's just a close-up. Chairs, we, went and tried a couple chairs, made sure that they were comfy. Oh, I also want to mention that, and nobody brought this up, but can you go back, Russ, for a second? And this was, again, being married to an electrician, he thinks of like all these cute little details, even though this isn't an electrical thing. But when you put your floor down, a van comes with those like metal hooks, and we had our outfitter take the metal hooks and put them up above the floor, and then we bought rope ratchets. And so anytime we're moving the vehicle, these chairs get rope ratcheted down, so they're not sliding. Huh? Yours does too. So you gotta remember to ask though, and make sure that those hooks that are on the bottom of the van get moved up onto your floor and re-secured, because that's really, I think that's like a really big, that's like one of those things I wouldn't have thought of. Next slide.
You can also use those to stand up your tripods to transport and
Yeah.
bungee jump, so
Yeah,
they
yeah.
don't shift around on the floor.
That's just another picture. Next slide. Here it is in use. This is at the Falmouth Commodores baseball game. We have a whole manual. We did some training with our staff about, I bought cones, and I was very specific about where the cones would be situated. 1 at the nose, 2 at the back, and then here's our awning. And then I bought, nobody brought this up, but I bought these weighted feet. And then I got a company that just like has like rocks and gravel. They donated some, and we just filled it. We put our name on it, and then because we're on Cape Cod, it can get windy. And I know that some of the vans have the auto retract, we didn't want the auto retract, we just crank it. But I wanted to make sure that the legs were secure. So this was just some of the little details that you might not think about that you need, but I got these on Amazon.com and they've been just terrific, really helpful. Next slide. And then you see a couple of my staff working in the van, and you'll see they like it the long way. So there's our little tip-up thing, and you know, if nobody uses it, we could always just take it out, but we'll see. I have a feeling it'll get used by somebody, so. Next slide. And then this is at the Commodores game. This is at our town band concert. These are just volunteers. We do require that staff drive the van. They can run the equipment. We do the engineering. We do all the plugging in, and but they can run the equipment just like they would in the studio. They wouldn't come in the studio and start plugging stuff in. We do that. So they can they can direct, they can run the audio, they can record whatever graphics, but they are not allowed to do any of the engineering. This is also staff working on a Commodores baseball game. Next. One of our members, there's that Apple box, and I just want to point out that I went to these are such little funny details that I don't know why I just kind of picked up on, but I went to a hardware store and I bought the non-skid little things that you put on your stairs at, outside your home, and I just stuck them on like for tread there, so that when you do, because there is still a step, but then it's still kind of a long way down. So this just makes sure that nobody's slipping if it's rainy or something like that. And that's one of our best volunteers does our town band concerts once a week. Go ahead, next slide. I'm not sure where I'm at. And that's pretty much it. And that's our game.
I have a question. The heater that you say you have in your van, that little unit that looks like the console, what kind of heater? It's not coming out of that unit, right? Or
Yeah, no, the heat's coming out of that. Do you know what kind of heater that is? Do you remember what it's called?
I forgot the name of it. Yeah, it's about a 2,500 watt electric heater. It just has a high-speed motor on it. On something like that, it's enclosed. You got your equipment running anyway, so you got some heat producing, but it does knock the cold out of it, and I mean it's convenient because it's such a small package.
Yeah.
I was just curious, because I remember one of the old man, that heater was underneath the console, burned our feet, that's why.
No, it actually worked. We had no problems with it. It actually kept us nice and warm in the winter, and we've more used our AC because in the summer we found that spring, summer, and fall, we were doing about 4 production vehicle shoots a week. Not nearly as many as in the winter, so we weren't having to use that a ton as we were really giving the AC a workout.
The other thing is that, again, on the Dodge ProMaster or similar trucks like that, having supplemental AC or heat or fan is a option that you may decide you do or don't need. I mean, the truck heat itself, if you just turn the truck on and maybe purchase yourself a good 10-foot of hose for your exhaust so that the exhaust is not right at the rear of the truck, you can use the truck's heater and AC, and it does a fine job if the doors aren't open the whole time. Deb has a good idea by having separate circuits going to the AC and the heat and powering the truck. The only problem is you need to make sure that the kids, if they're doing the powering, are not running it to the same circuit in the
Right.
place where you're, that has to go to 2 different circuits, and you
Correct.
have to know that they're 2 different circuits.
That's one thing you want to do, I think, outside in places where you go to football stadium and where you
Color
go
code.
on a basis, have them install 2 separate circuits that
Yep.
are dedicated for your use.
Yep. The other thing that hasn't come up that's going to be a big thing, and Pete almost touched on it there, is cable lengths and type of cameras that you're going to be using. This is the past year, the first year that I would start to recommend wireless video cameras as a potential if it fits in the design of your studio and the placement of your truck works for you. But if you have line of sight, you can get a good, strong 2,000-foot throw for a wireless that has very, very little latency in your signal. And it's worth considering whether or not that might be a deal, because you hit the magic 328 foot on an SDI cable, and you're about halfway to center field if you're lucky, and that's your prime camera location. So the other thing, of course, is that fiber is now very much an affordable option. And so as you're looking to how much money am I going to spend on the cost of a truck, we built 2 trucks that are identical as far as interior design for lighting and platforms and some minor changes between them. But the cost difference between the 2 trucks was enormous because one went with fiber, full studio control CCUs, actually fiber send CCUs, and the other folks went with camcorders with battery operated monitors on the top and just a single cable coming back. So you have to decide where your budget is for that, because you can spend $75,000 on equipment or you can spend $125,000 on equipment. Just depends on what your needs and usages are going to be.
And I don't think I said, but without any equipment, I think our van, including the van itself, was about $6,000 to $7,000. But we basically served as the general contractor on it. We did the general contracting. It was about $67,000 all in.
And you had some of the components already.
Well, that does not include any equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, no equipment. The equipment we already had, we didn't have to buy anything.
I think the number that Drake uses, if you've seen, they've been really showing off their truck quite a bit online, mass access and that kind of stuff. I think the number that he uses was he just crossed 130,000, including the acquisition of the truck. That's equipment, truck, and build out.
Other questions? Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the advantages or current contrast between using a fly pack versus having a vehicle?
I think the easiest, if I could just jump
Yeah,
in,
please.
I think the easiest answer to that question is that sometimes a member may be absolutely certified and qualified to do a multi-camera shoot someplace, but you don't have the staff to drive the truck, and you're certainly not going to have. So it provides an opportunity for more than the truck to do multi-camera shoots in a location where maybe the truck can't get to. Even with a wonderfully built-out truck, there are some locations that you just can't get the truck into, and therefore a fly pack, you're still using the truck to transport, but I think that's the basic of it.
Did that answer your question? For us, I mean, we still do both when you think about it, but people don't, most people don't really have room in their cars for our fly pack anyways. I mean, they really would need a truck or a van. So we've still found ourselves transporting it. So we just figured we could have the best of both worlds this way.
There's 2 or 3 switchers now that are just so self-contained. They're the size of a briefcase. You put them in a computer bag, shoulder bag, and you've got audio, video, graphics, record, and 5 or 6 input switchers, all in one device. And the only other thing you might be taking with you is, gee, how am I transporting this to go live? And in some cases, that's built into the same box. Love the live stream HD 550 TriCaster products. Data Video's got most of that, not all of that. Broadcast Pix Roadie, some of these are pretty all-in-one devices.
I was just gonna show you really quick, because, you know, either way, you're talking about a lot of money. So we actually prepared a presentation that I'm not gonna go through the whole thing, but we prepared a presentation for our board of directors, including our needs assessment, why we needed a van. We do the Falmouth Road Race. We ended up renting a box truck for our equipment because we needed something. You know, so we did a whole explanation of what is it that we do that requires us to need a van. So we went through all of these things. We then looked at 3 vehicles, this one, and this one. And then we gave them a rundown on all of them. And I'm more than happy to share this with people who want it. But this way they saw that we really did our due diligence on each of these. This was the base price with no options on each of these vehicles. So you can see the Nissan was the cheapest, but we just felt it was a little too small for us. These were the standard features. These were some factory installed extras that we knew we wanted. We did vehicle warranty comparisons for the board. We looked at who had done some of the things. This is the company that we ended up going with and what each of the costs were for all the additional things that we would need for aftermarket. And we did a whole layout and why we needed each of those things. And then you saw the floor plan that we did. We had some examples of some other stations. This was this Foxborough's old patch panel. These were additional other, again, things. We did not end up doing a ramp. We just decided we didn't need it. These were other things that we were gonna have to do, chairs, you know, a cart to lug everything in and out of our studio, like we really needed that. Really nice extension cords, that's really important. You gotta have really, really good, don't be grabbing your cheapo extension cords. You do not wanna be doing that, okay? And then we did the vehicle price totals and a final recommendation from staff and why we did which, and then the second choice, and then how it might look. This was before we actually did the wrap. We did a little, and we couldn't even get a picture of the high roof, so we just did a little depiction of you know, what we thought and who was on our committee for that. So, I think that's a really important thing. If you're trying to convince your board to spend between like, you know, $67,000 and $130,000, I'd be going in with a really, you know, strong presentation to them, because that's a lot of money to be asking for. Plus, just remember, it's a great marketing tool. We're like all over town in this thing. People who never knew about us before know about us now. Okay, great. Well, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.